My name is AJ Riedel, and you're listening to Thriving Through, the podcast where each week I have real conversations with self-employed consultants and an occasional professional speaker about what it really takes to build a profitable consulting practice. So I have a question for you. Do you want to get paid to speak, but don't have the slightest idea how to become a professional speaker? That's why I invited Dr. Jen Fry onto the podcast today. She's here to talk about how she became a professional speaker, earning $300,000 to $500,000 annually from speaking alone. I know when I talked to her, I had all sorts of questions about how do you get started as a professional speaker? Today, she specializes in conflict and culture and is known for helping organizations navigate difficult conversations and critical situations. With over 8 years of experience in professional speaking, she's helped teams across industries achieve better communication and conflict resolution skills. So if you've ever wondered how to build a speaking practice that pays the bills, you won't want to miss this episode. Please welcome the brilliant, bold, and beautiful, disruptive Dr. Jen Fry. So Jen, tell me, what was your path to becoming self-employed?
Oh man, I think that's a very fascinating question because I feel like with many people, it's not a linear path. I fell into self-employment. This was not something I thought I would do. I was a college volleyball coach for about 15 years. I lived it, breathed it. I thought I would be retiring at 70 or 80 as a volleyball coach. And then I started to realize that I had more passions and things I wanted to do. And at the same time, I was feeling very resentful at the sport. If many of y'all don't know about college sports, it is life consuming. I coached volleyball for 15 years, and from the first week of August till mid-December, you don't get to have a life. You don't get to have freedom. You can't just do anything. And I was starting to feel really resentful at that. I was missing friends' weddings, anniversaries, all of those things. And when you're in volleyball and when you're doing what I'm doing, you have to be 100% in it. And I just felt like I wasn't. And I just started to gauge my feelings, and I was just really resentful. And around this time, I started to just research more things talking about race and sport. And it came to a point where I'll never forget. It's always easy to say you're going to leave your job or your industry until you have to tell the person that's paying you, right? Like you can tell all of your friends and family, I'm going to quit tomorrow. Okay, tell the person that's responsible for your 401k. Tell that person that's responsible for your healthcare. Then it's a whole different feeling. And I'll never forget, I had told myself, because we would always meet like on Mondays, and I said, if I do not say something on Monday at this meeting, I'm going to forget about leaving, quitting. I'm just going to stay in college volleyball. Like I was at that cusp. And I think a lot of us are at that cusp of what do I do? How do I do it? I want to leave, but I'm not really sure. And I had been saying, okay, if I'm going to make this jump, let me kind of make sure I have a healthy savings. At that point, I owned 2 houses. I wanted to make sure I could pay for things. And so I was preparing my savings, and then it just came on the first. My head coach would always say this thing at the end of the meetings. I can't even remember what she would say. And right when she said it, it was kind of like, like anything else. And I just remember word vomiting, I'm resigning. And all of us were just shocked. They were as shocked as I was shocked. We were all 3 of us were in there shocked. And I decided to leave. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I just knew I wasn't going to do that. And so from that point, I went and worked at Duke. And then Colin Kaepernick kneeled, and all of my friends were like, how do we handle this? What do we do? And I realized that there was a need for someone who really wanted to work on skill development. And so from that point, I was just helping people with stuff. And then a friend literally said, you should look at becoming a professional speaker. And I had no clue what that was, what that entailed. You could have said I could go to the moon. I had no clue. And so they said it, and I tend to listen to like small bugs in my ear. And so I literally was just like, okay, I don't know what to do. And I'm a pretty resourceful person. So I just Googled it. I researched it. I changed my website. I was blogging a lot at the time. I changed my website to become what I thought was a professional speaker's website. Didn't have a clue at that. And that kind of started my jump into it. I worked at Duke, and like I always tell people, what you think you want to do when you have a job that's paying you, figure it out when the job is paying you. Because I see a lot of people who are like, I'm tired of this job. I want to quit and do my own thing. AJ, you go from working 9 to 5 to a 24/7. It is a whole different ballgame. And so I tell people and I warn them, you want to do your own thing, do it while you have a full-time job to figure out the nuance, figure out how bad you want it. Are you willing to do it on your off time? Are you willing to do it when you don't want to do it at 10 p.m., 11 p.m.? And so I was working at Duke. I was interviewing people for this little podcast I had. And I started to just get really good at professional speaking. And I was also looking, a friend had said, you have 2 masters, you can't get a third, you have to get a PhD. I was like, okay. So I was getting into the PhD process. I found a school, and then I said, okay, I literally was like, I'll leave Duke. I'll get paid this little $18,000. And if it doesn't work, I at least have my stipend. I can hustle, I can figure it out. But that's where I kind of took the jump, was I got this PhD offer, and my schedule is starting to get so packed. I knew I couldn't do it all. I could not have a full-time job, speak as much as I was, and do my PhD. And so I just jumped into this kind of self-employment. I did not have a clue what it meant. I knew nothing of this world. I just knew I could do this thing really well, and I'll figure out the rest at the end.
Okay. That's a great attitude. I could figure it out.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you a couple questions about when Colin Kaepernick kneeled, because that feels, it sounds like that kind of got you into thinking about some, or realizing that something was important to you that you wanted to communicate to the world.
It was more of, I realized people needed something. The one thing I left out is I also started a tech company in 2022. And what I realized with my tech company and my professional speaking is that you have to solve a problem for people. And so when a lot of people come to me and they're like, I want to be a motivational speaker. And I'm like, here's the deal. Everyone wants to be a motivational speaker. Everyone, and I say this with the love of everything. Everyone thinks that their story is worth being a motivational story. Like I say this, and some people might get upset, and I feel you if you get mad at me. I get it. But like, not every story is worth being a motivational story. And a lot of you don't know how to tell your story in a motivational way. There's a big difference of it, because you have to know how to tell a story that grabs people, that motivates them, that inspires them, but doesn't leave them feeling dejected. Like, man, this guy went through all this stuff. Oh, how, like you don't want that. And so I think what I tell people is that a lot of times when you have motivational speakers, they're celebrities, they are people that lost a limb, right? Like really high level stuff to be a motivational speaker. Like you have to really refine your story. And for me, what I realized when he kneeled was that there was a void of helping people develop skills. There was a void of knowledge. There was a void of just help within that area of having tough conversations, critical conversations. And so for me, so many people were bombarding me. It told me that I was one of the only people helping them. And so when someone was like, you should look at being a professional speaker, it was kind of, to me, this idea of this was a vehicle of helping people. The reason I got into college volleyball was it was a vehicle of helping young women to develop at a really critical time in their life. Now, speaking, for me, with the topics I speak on, it is about helping people figure out how to navigate hard and critical times. And I have a skill of helping lead people through hard stuff without getting stuck on shame or guilt. And so I'm a very curious person. I'm very inquisitive. And so I just did a little research into what people were doing, who were they doing, who was doing it, how were they doing it. And so just a lot of research on it, but it was more of like, this was a vehicle to still help people in just a different way.
Okay. Okay. And you mentioned that, I mean, how did you get were you really good at speaking when you decided to become a professional public speaker, or how did you develop that skill?
I will tell you, AJ, that like I know we've had a lot of people that talk about like imposter syndrome, right? Like a lot of people talk about it. I don't know what that is because baby, I'm not going to be an imposter. I might be bad at something, but I don't think I shouldn't be doing it. And that's the difference. I have in some way like balls of steel, like things I should be in these rooms. I should be on these stages. I am not now. Do I feel nervous? Yes. But I feel like I should be there. And so when someone mentioned professional speaking, I wasn't like, oh, me, I would never. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I've always been the loudmouth, the talkative one, the one that will say the thing. So this was just a different way of doing it. And I had to learn how to do it well. So people come to me and they'll say, Jen, how do I get those big checks? I'm like, but you're not good. You have to, once you expect a big check, the person who wrote you the check, their job depends on you now. I don't think many people think about that. You have the ability to get someone fired if you don't do it well. And so for me, I think about that really intensely. And so I look at this as a skill, but also I wanted to protect the person that got me this job. And so when someone was like, you should look at being a speaker, I was like, okay, let me look at the skills. How should it be done? I'm watching speaker reels. I'm paying attention. Who are the top ones? Why are they the top ones? What do they do? What about in my area? Who is doing this? How are they doing it? And so it never was for me like I shouldn't do it. It was like I just have to be, I just have to work to be good at it. And I don't think a lot of people think in that way. They'll think, oh my gosh, I'm not good. I shouldn't do it. And you're not going to be good at anything when you start. Nothing. You are not Mozart. You are not Beethoven. You're not going to just sit down at a piano and write the Ninth Symphony or whatever, or whatever it is. You're not going to do that. You're not going to get a basketball and be like, I know how to do it well. These things take a lot of work, time, effort, and skill building. And so that's how I look at this is I picked up pickleball a few weeks ago, and I was one of the bad people on the court. I knew I was athletic, but I was bad. And my whole mindset was I just need to play more to get better at it. And so that's what my whole frame of reference was. It was like, I just have to get the reps in. So I will always be appreciative of the first people who hired me because I was not good. I was not good. And I didn't charge. And so because I wasn't good, there wasn't like such an expectation, but I was able to get reps in. And one thing with professional speaking, it doesn't matter what book you read, what movie you watch, what video you watch, you have to get on stage and be in front of 500, 200, 300,000, 20, 30 to see what it feels like and have to get the crowd to go with you from point A to point B in that entire time.
I just had a thought and I completely forgot.
It'll come back to us. It will float back in.
Yes, yes. Oh, it was so good. Oh, I know. Take us back to those early days, like your first couple speaking engagements. And so I want to clarify. So the first couple speaking engagements you didn't charge.
No, I didn't even
Okay.
know what to charge. Like I didn't even have a clue about that at all. Mm-mm.
Okay. So I want to focus on the point where you had enough reps that you felt like you could start to charge. How did you get that first gig, the first paid gig?
So I don't know if it was a feeling of um, finally having enough reps to charge or that someone just offered me money. And I think that's what it was. Someone was like, we'll pay you. It wasn't me. I didn't have the decision. One thing I always tell people is the market will tell you your value. You can sit here and be like, I'm going to charge $50,000. Baby, the market's going to tell you your value. And so interestingly enough, the way I got my first speaking engagement, one of the reasons why I like doing podcasts is back in 2018, I did a volleyball podcast. I don't even remember what we talked about. I just did it. And there was a young lady, Jillian, who worked at an independent school, who was also the volleyball coach. So she heard me and she contacted me about my first speaking engagement. And I had no clue what to charge. I think I charged like $1,000. And I was coming up from Durham. Funny enough, I live in Baltimore. The school is Gilman, which is in Baltimore. So it's like a full circle. And so she was like, how much? And I was like, I don't know, $1,000. She's like, okay. And I think they put me in a hotel room. And so that was my first speaking, my intro into a fee. And after that, I had a friend who I worked with at Elon who left working in higher ed to go be a speaker, Dan. And I remember calling him after that and being like, Dan, I just got paid for a speaking engagement. What do I charge? And he literally was like, you will not charge anything less than 2,500. And that was such a scary number. I was like, 2,500. And he was like, yes. And you need to ask for like travel. And I just was like, I was so petrified because I didn't know what to ask. And so that's how I figured it out was, okay, now don't charge less than 2,500. And that's how I kind of started getting paid, was that I just fell into it and someone offered me money.
Okay. And then you did some research to find out what what you should be charging.
No, because like there wasn't really research to do, because within college athletics, there wasn't many people speaking. There was, oh my gosh, there was, gosh, maybe one or two speakers. There wasn't really anyone that like their mainstay was college athletics. There might have been like a former pro athlete, but like no one that I even remember as a actual speaker. And then plus, people really wouldn't put their rates online. So there was no research you couldn't do chat GPT and like, tell me what are the top 10 speakers and what do they charge? There wasn't a way to do that. And so Dan was great because he worked with the speakers bureau. And so he was coming from knowing what people charge. And he's like, this is what you should charge. And so really what it was, to be very transparent, was, so I was doing that in 19 and I was just charging 2,500, 3,000. Like I just was charging. I didn't know what. And then in 2020, my prices started to go up. And then COVID hit, and really it was my online business managers who were like, you need to start charging more. We need to double our price. Like they were the ones who helped me. So I would say one lesson learned is get you someone that's going to make sure you get more money. If you are going to hire an online business manager, you cannot have someone that's afraid to ask for more money. You can't. You should not be the only person doing that. Because my online business manager, my chief of staff, Dawn, is amazing. Like if I'm like, well, how about this much? She's like, no, this is what we're charging. Like she is a staunch advocate of me. And you need to make sure you have people that will ask for more money for you, so that, because you're going to trust your online business manager with having to make offers and deals without you. And you don't want to have someone that you're like, girl, why you only say we can only do this for 1,000? Right? Like you want someone that's going to be pushing the line. You can always say, okay, we charge 10,000, but for you, we'll give you 5. Like you can make all of those deals, but you have to have someone that's going to push the line for you, because they're going to be doing that stuff on your behalf.
Okay. Do you have to have an online business manager as a public speaker, as a professional speaker?
I think it's going to get to a point that you have to, because you cannot do it yourself.
Okay.
And a lot of people are afraid of spending money. The one thing I appreciate my financial advisor told me is you have to spend money to make money. Dawn is one of the best investments in my company and me, because I am not a details oriented person. I am a very big picture person. Dawn is very detail oriented. I am not. So I would be missing out on opportunities if I did not have her. And so that's a really big thing, is that some people are like, well, I can't afford it. Fine. You don't need a full time. Get someone like 20 hours a month, right? 5 hours a week. Like someone, what do you need them to do? Do they need to just do contract? Do they need to look for different opportunities? Like figure out what is the pain point that you're like, I hate doing this, and find someone, pay someone to do it. Say, I'm going to do $500 a month. What can I charge? What can someone charge me? And how many hours can I get? And so think in that way, but you have to get some type of help, because you're not going to be at your best trying to do everything.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. Very true. You found your niche at the intersection, you said, of conflict and culture. How long did it take you to figure that out? And what did you try before that didn't work?
So that's interesting. So that's my niche now. So when I first started, my niche was the intersection of race and sport. And so I did that up until 2023. and my nose itches. And I did up until then. And so I started to pay attention to what states were doing in terms of DEI, what they were doing in terms of the states, because a lot of states were starting to cancel DEI. And so I was saying, okay, what's happening in society that might make it harder for me to be a speaker? And so I think a lot of people are very staunch in their area. I'm just going to stay here and this is where I'm going to stay. And you can't do that. You have to look at, if you're a speaker, what is going on in society, what is going on in the government, what is going on in the world. Like, you have to have your finger on the pulse because it can affect you. For me, in 23, I started paying attention. Okay, Texas, you can't do it. Florida, you can't do it. Iowa, and I started to see all these states. And I'm like, I don't want to have a speaking profession that I can only do it in 3 states. Like, that makes no sense. And so with that, what I did was I started to pay attention in my speaking engagements where people were leaning in, asking questions, really using it as like a research ground. And so I did that because I wanted to start paying attention to what the next iteration of me was going to be. And so I'm paying attention and I'm saying, okay, people are starting to lean in when I'm talking about conflict. People are leaning in when I'm talking about certain things. And so with that, I was like, okay, this might be the next iteration of it. This might be the place to kind of, okay, this can be it. And so that's why I started thinking about with conflict. And again, I did my research. I can't harp enough on doing your research. You need to know who's in your field. You need to know what they charge. You need to know what their topics are. You need to know where they are. Like, you need to know. And so I was like, okay, well, people aren't talking about conflict within college athletics. People aren't talking about it in a nuanced way within certain things. So let me start building out this thing while I'm still talking about race and sport. Again, I didn't just say I'm cutting it at the knees and jumping into a new topic. No, I like melted it in together because there's nothing more stressful than switching topics. I didn't even know if it was going to work. I didn't have any materials, nothing. So I had to really intertwine it to get it going. And so that's what I did. And so it probably took, because we first started at the intersection of conflict and DEI. And then once we were like, oh no, things are getting bad, then we made to move to conflict and culture. And so really paying attention to what materials, what things we need to start putting out. I will say I made the move, but I didn't do the full pivot in a very intentional way. And so some of the mistakes I made was, once I did the pivot to conflict and culture, I didn't tell enough people. I had the ego of like, oh, people are going to know. They're not. So I had to hire someone. I went into Kirsten Roldan's like $1 million email program, which was phenomenal, and started changing how I emailed to the point where after my first few emails, some people were like, who'd you hire for your emails? Because they are really great. And I was like, it's me. So really shifted my email branding, then shifted my website, then shifted my one pager, then shifted my LinkedIn, then shifted the topics I talk on. So like really was very intentional after, once I realized where we were missing, shifting into that to be able to sit at the intersection of conflict and culture. But like, you have to be willing to have different iterations of you and your work, because there are some people who are like, no, DEI is going to be fine. And then when everything came out, they were cut at the knees and trying to figure out what to do next.
Yep. Yep. So that awareness, where did that, I mean, you saw the DEI backlash and you started preparing, you started pivoting. And you talked about, a lot of consultants and coaches and speakers do get blindsided by industry changes. Is that just something you were born with, or how do you build that kind of market awareness?
Oh man, AJ, you're asking some great questions. I think you have to have your pulse on stuff, meaning I was paying attention. So one thing I would advise anyone to do is to set up Google alerts. I have like 30 Google alerts. So maybe one or two times a day, I'll get Google alerts on articles. So you can do that so that you can pay attention to what's going on in your industry. And so I would say do that, but you have to know what's going on. You have to pay attention to society, government, all of those things of what is going on in your industry. What are the big things that are happening? So for instance, say for instance, I don't know, if there was all of a sudden we got paid maternity leave, paternity leave for everyone. It became a law. Everyone got 16 weeks of paid parental leave. I would say if you are a woman who speaks on parenting topics, you need to go hard at corporations to talk about the importance of it. You need to be hard in what you're talking about on social media and LinkedIn and your articles about the importance of taking leave, the importance of being at home with the kid. Like you have to be paying attention to those things to say, okay, this is my time to really push on the gas pedal. And I think for me, it's the competitor in me I don't want to lose. I remember one time a friend of mine right before COVID was like, you should look at having an e-course. She was like, it'd be great for you. And Esther is like a prophet. And I was like, no, I shouldn't have it. 8 months later, someone came out with the e-course. And so now I'm behind sprinting. And I said, I never want to be behind sprinting again. So because I never want to be behind and taken aback, because there's the worst thing is seeing someone that's in your industry doing this thing that you decided not to do. Maybe that is the worst thing that you're like, no, I don't want to do it. And so for me, that's also why I wrote a book. I wrote a book called I Said No, How to Have a Backbone and Boundaries Without Being a Jerk. Because I want to have a book out there on this topic with this title before other people. And so that's it. It's competitiveness, it's curiosity, and it's not wanting to lose, really.
Okay. So harnessing and leveraging your competitive nature.
Yes. I tell people I'm uncomfortably competitive. Like, don't have me play your kids in Monopoly. I will beat them. Like I don't play board games well. Like I am way too competitive for those things. And so I just bring it into now with the work I do.
Okay. Tell me where you want to be in 3 to 5 years.
In 3 to 5 years, so like I said, I own a tech company. And one of the things I want to be on is like the cover of Forbes. I want to be on the cover of Forbes. And I want to be the #1 conflict keynoter. Like I want to be the person. So one of my goals when I first started as a speaker was I said, if you were going to mention race, that was my whole goal. If anyone mentioned the word race, a problem with it, you're going to mention Gen Pride Talks. Now, I want to be, if you are thinking about conflict, hard problems at work, frustrations, you're going to be thinking of Gen Pride Talk. And so I want my name connected to conflict, where people, once it comes up as like, hey, we're having a problem with our team, they're like, have you heard of Gen Pride Talks? You should look into her book, her podcast, or whatever it is. And so that's my goal, is to be that expert that's known for the topic. Also, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is because if I'm known for the topic, then I'm on the big stages, I'm on the big podcasts, I'm on all these things because I am that known expert. Brene Brown, holler at your girl. Oprah, holler at your girl. I'm gonna be on your stages and podcasts.
Okay. All right. If you were starting today as an unknown, trying to become a professional speaker, what would you do differently?
That's a hard question because I don't know. What would I do differently? I don't know, because for me, I really got to know my niche very well. And I think that's where a lot of professional speakers, again, they're kind of like, I have this motivational story. Baby, you need to give some skills to them. There needs to be educational content that they're leaving with. And so I was really doggish about like knowing this content, researching it, I did so much academic stuff because I did not want to be caught on my heels with I want to be caught on my heels of not knowing something that someone brings up in the audience. Like that was my worst fear. Even with my tech company, it's my worst fear of I get asked a question, I have no clue about it. And so I would say if I were to start over, maybe if I'm pivoting industry, pivot with a full intentness. right? Like, so when I pivoted from race and sport to conflict in culture, used, okay, 2023, we're going to build out a marketing brand. We're going to build out these things that show the pivot. And so that way people know what's going on and know the area I'm going to be expert in versus I think that they know and then it shows that they don't. And so I think I would just be way more intentional with my pivot and how I market myself with it. Oh, no, let me take that back. Matter of fact, if I were starting over, the thing I would build out is my email list. If I would have built out my email list from the beginning, baby, I have 100,000 people on there. There's no question my email list will be overflowing. And that's where I made the mistake of not understanding how valuable your email list is. If you are starting out, or if I was starting out, building out that email list of getting people on there, sending them multiple emails a week. And now I send either 2 emails a week or 3 emails a week. Sometimes I might send more, but that's the minimum. I go 3, 2, 3, 2. And the people on your email list want to hear from you. I think we have this idea that we're going to bother people. So keep it to a minimum. You only bother people if you don't have good stuff to say. Have good stuff to say. Be thoughtful. Every email shouldn't be selling them. All right, like be good. Think about the email list that you stay on, even if the stuff that you're getting isn't applicable. Like the one I think about who does it the most is Bath and Body Works. I get 8 million emails from Bath and Body Works, but I stay on there because I know I'm going to want the candle deal of $6.95. And so I'm okay with deleting them because the candle deal is worth more than the deleting of the emails. So have something valuable and funny and interesting to say, but really cultivate your email list. Cultivate it, get people on, say interesting stuff, because that's a big thing I would have done differently.
Okay. How do you get people onto your email list today?
So we have it where whenever I speak, there's a great thing called Talkadot, Talkadot. And so they do testimonials on there. So what I do is right before my ending slide, I put that up there, give people 2 minutes to scan it, fill it out. And then that puts people on my email list. You go to my website, we have it on my podcast, multiple ways to get people on. And so I would say do that. Find multiple ways to get people on your email list and just be interesting. So there was a person that lived with me and she was in her mid-20s and she would do Instagram and social media. And it was like, a lot of the young ones want to be like sexy. And I was like, be interesting. People want to follow interesting people. They look forward to that. That's what you want. And so that's the thing I would say is like, have an interesting list or interesting topics and stuff so that people want to follow you. That is the main thing. And so I have it on my Instagram, LinkedIn, all these different places to get on the email list, the website, all of that.
Okay, wonderful. Do you have any we're getting to wrapping up. Do you have any last words of advice for consultants and especially those who maybe want to write a book or want to do speaking?
Okay, so I think that's 2 separate things. So I think the first thing is when I realized I wanted to be on bigger stages, I had to have a book. That's the key thing. All the big speakers have a book. You want to be thinking about how to sell before the event, during the event, and after the event. So writing a book was really critical to that success. So I would say if you want to be a speaker, find a niche. You cannot be the kitchen sink. You cannot talk about everything for women, everything for sports, everything as a pet owner. You have to find your niche. And finding a niche can feel scary. It can feel like, well, I'm making it so small that no one can find me. And that's not true. People want experts. So find what your niche is and research the hell out that. Be the person where if anyone has a question in that area, they're immediately contacting you about it. And so really think about what is the niche you want the problem you want to solve, the niche you want to be in. You cannot be the kitchen sink about it. And so you have to figure that out. So that's why I say if you're going to be a professional speaker, figure out that niche, because motivational speakers, it's a certain type of person. It's not just a story. So that would be, I think, the first thing about it. The second thing is, so my book is called I Said No, How to Set Boundaries and Backbone Without Being a Jerk. You can pre-order it now up to August 1st on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And the thing I would say about writing a book is a lot of people, when they say about the writing of the book, are like, clear out your space, set a candle and an intention, put on soft music. Maybe some people can't do that. Some people got kids running around, a dog barking, they're always moving. Some people can't do that. So what I did that was immensely helpful is I have an iPhone. And whenever I was driving, because when I'm driving, that's when all the epiphanies come to me. If I'm driving or in the shower. And so what I would literally do is I would just do voice to text in the notes. So I would just, if all of a sudden a chapter came up, I would just talk about it into the notes section, copy that, put it into a Google Sheet, and then edit it. And so find the way that will work for you to write the chapters. It does not have to be you sitting down with a quill and a feather and dipping your pen into ink and writing on a scroll, right? That might work for some people. That might not work for you. You might be fine if you write from 4 to 5 in the morning. Who the hell does that? Those are batshit crazy people. Ain't no way. Some people that works amazing for. I am not a morning person. For me, I was able to get this book finished really fast because I was able to figure out what's my medium that will make me successful and find your medium. And so for me, I was able to, the intention was I wanted the first draft to be done by the end of 2024. And I literally, those last few days, I was sitting there editing and typing. So I had my first draft done. And then I went on Fiverr and I found some excellent people who do copy editing, line by line, formatting, all of those things for a very good price. And I did my cover on 99 designs. You put the information in, you have a contest. So I had over 102 designs entered and found it that way. So figure out what works for you. We're in a day and time where there are so many opportunities to figure out what works for you, that don't feel shame if you're not sitting down with your feather and your little dot of ink. Figure out what works for you just to get the damn thing written. And then you can do the editing.
Okay. And hire help to do the editing.
Oh my gosh. Yes. For my PhD, I had people that edited and did all the APA format for my dissertation. For my book, I found this great guy who had a PhD in romance study for Dukes and had like 4,000 books edited. He did the beta read for $87. He did my line by line read for $1,100. And I found this other young woman, a Black female, because I'm a Black female, and I wanted the last read to be by someone who's a Black female. She did it for $168. So all of my editing for my book was what, $1,300? And it was phenomenal editing. Get help, pay for help. Some people will be like, I can't afford it. You can't afford to put out a shitty book. Like, you think you can't afford it. You do not want to have a shitty book out where people are like, don't read it, or the reviews are like 1s or 2s. That will be far more detrimental. So if you have to save up your money, if you have to go drive Uber for a few times or deliver it to, that's your editing money, do it. Because the other option is you have a really, really bad book that no one wants to read.
Got it. Good advice. And on that note, that's a good time for us to say goodbye. And that's a wrap on today's episode of Thriving Through. What an incredible conversation with Dr. Jen Fry. The key takeaway I want you to remember is this: building a profitable speaking business requires treating it as a skill to be developed, not just a story to be told. Jen's journey from free speaking gigs to commanding $300,000 to $500,000 annually wasn't about having the most dramatic personal story. It was about deliberately developing her craft, getting the reps in, and building the business infrastructure around her expertise. She didn't just rely on natural talent. She studied other speakers, worked with coaches, learned the nuances of different industries, and is continuously refining her approach. Here's one action you can take right now to put this episode into practice. Start getting your reps in, even if it means speaking for free initially. As Jen emphasized, There's no substitute for being on stage in front of 200, 300, 500 people to see what it actually feels like. You can read all the books and watch all the videos you want, but if you have to get up there, but you have to get up there and learn how to take a crowd from point A to point B. Find local organizations, industry events, or networking group where you can practice your craft. Now, the goal isn't to stay free forever, it's to build the skill and confidence that will eventually command premium fees. Remember, as Jen said, you're not going to be Mozart sitting down at the piano for the first time. Professional speaking takes deliberate practice and skill building. That's a wrap on today's episode of Thriving Through. If you enjoyed this episode and learned something from it, please leave a review so that other consultants like you can find the podcast. And until next time, keep building, keep growing, and keep thriving through.